So we're official?
We are official, yes.
All right. Are we live?
We are live.
All right. What's
Yes.
up, everybody? Jared James here. Welcome to this edition of Today with Jared. James, I'm riding solo on the camera, but as usual, I have producer Tom here to add to the conversation.
Always insightful. Yes.
Always insightful. It's what they listen for. You got to give the people what they want.
I did actually get recognized a few times. That I got called out specifically for. I was like, they asked if I was Tom from the podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels good, doesn't it?
That's us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Linda got pointed out at an airport the other day.
Really?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I mean, it would have been bad. They did say, "Are you Jared's wife?"
Yeah.
She's like, "I am Linda." First off, that's funny. We got a few things to talk about today. Very real estate focused. Before I get there, and you and I hadn't talked about this. Did you watch the VP debate last night?
No.
I knew you were going to say no. I knew you were going to say no. I actually enjoyed it. Like, if anybody watched the VP debate, it was actually very respectful, and they were very specific about policy and those things. That way you can kind of decide, which one you like, whether you like, don't like, whatever it is. But I thought it was very substantive in that way. And there was something about that I really liked, and then you also had, they were very just respectful to each other, which, it's like, I feel like we don't get that anymore. It's sometimes one of them would say something and the other one would be like, actually, I agree, and there was one moment where, who's the Republican guy? I even forget their names right now. I forget his name, but I guess the other guy, Waltz or something, I forget his name too, the Democratic VP. He talked about how his 17-year-old or something had seen a shooting or something. And there was this moment where, God, what is the Republican's name? Where he literally, and it almost looked like a genuine thing. He stopped, and before he even came back and answered whatever, he was just he's like, your son witnessed or what? He's like, I did not realize that. And he's like, I'm so sorry. That must have been traumatic, or whatever. And he seemed like he was genuine, like a legit, hey man, that's tough. That's a 17-year-old. And there was a moment when I'm watching that and I'm just like, yeah, I kind of miss this with classy people, just kind of, it's not who can get the best soundbite and the best insult or whatever, it's just a weird time we live in. And so we won't talk about this because there's not much else to talk about other than that. I was just curious if you had seen anything or you had heard anything, or I had a feeling you didn't.
Yeah, I'm really bad at this.
But that's kind of what I didn't even know it was on, and then I saw it on. I'm like, oh, I got to watch this. And it was interesting for sure. I think the people who they're repping, the people who are trying to be president, could probably learn something from that and be a little bit more substantive and, just have conversations regardless of what side you're on. I just think that that's good for the country. It's good for everybody watching. It's good for our kids watching. But I digress regardless. We got a lot to talk about. We already did a post-advance call with Linda that I thought was good. But there's been, we're doing another one of these so quick because there's been so much that has happened. I got into it a little bit on the call on the podcast the other day, but there's things coming right now because the industry is changing so quick that people aren't thinking about. People aren't thinking about things like the appraisal issues that are going to happen now. Where do things go where when you look at a comp, comparative property, you don't know what the incentive was, what the concession was on that property. Was there none? Was there some? Was there half? Was there, and when that's not listed in the MLS, which you're now not allowed to do, how is an appraiser going to get that info? It's just, these are things that we have to start to think about. It's like, well, they're going to call the agent. Well, agents can't even call leads back, that they can make money on. Now they're going to start calling, appraisers back. I don't know that is going to be something that happens. Another major thing that happened, guys, we should be aware of in this industry is Katie Johnson, the head of the NAR, legal team. NAR meaning National Association of Realtors, stepped down. Now, I have been jaded to now not believe any headline I ever read where somebody steps down. That almost always means firing, especially in a job like that generally people bring right through to retirement. She took that job, after somebody retired. She's been there 17 years. She's been the head of the legal counsel there for 10 years. And, I have some empathy. I mean, a lot of you have heard me just rail against what happened and everything else, but you've also heard me say, and I do agree, that NAR settled, they really didn't have a choice. that they were going to get litigated into bankruptcy, or they could settle. And so regardless, though, results are results. And I think the NAR legal team, or being on the legal team for NAR the last few years, with everything that's come out now, is probably not a popular thing. It's probably not something that people would say they've done a good job, even if you understand that they really didn't have a choice. From everything I've heard from from friends and otherwise, they've said that Katie is like a cool person, good person. One of my good friends texted me or messaged me on Facebook and said that it's someone we'd sit down and have a beer with. So I have empathy. I really do. I don't know her well. I don't, but I have empathy for the fact that I don't know that she stepped down. I know Inman reached out to NAR the moment it happened, and they were like, so we heard she got fired. And NAR immediately responded. They were like, no, she didn't. She stepped down, and then didn't answer any of their other questions, which just goes to me, that's like a PR push. And the reason why I say that I'm jaded is because, like, I've gotten to know a lot of these. A lot of people don't realize this, but, like, CEOs in our industry, their average tenure is like 2.5 years. It's just a conveyor belt. They just bring them through, and you got to promote someone else before they leave and go somewhere else. And almost every CEO that I've seen over time now that stepped down, when I've been familiar with the behind the scenes, they did not step down. Okay? They were forced to step down, like they got pushed down the steps. Okay, that's really what occurred. And so I'm just jaded. Like, I just don't believe anything I read anymore, because there's just no truth in anything. Someone said to me when I was at the Advance, someone stopped me and they were like, "We love listening to your stuff because you're just so honest. Like, you just say the things that we're thinking, but nobody in our industry will say." And I'm like, I don't work for anybody. Like, why wouldn't I? I don't have to get hired. I don't need to, whatever. It's like, I just want to make sure that, like, we're a mouthpiece for truth. And truth is a tough word. I don't like the whole my truth thing, because the definition of truth, that people can't have multiple truths. There's one truth. But my version, meaning, it doesn't mean I'm always going to be right. It means I believe it's the truth. That's probably a better way to say it. It's not my truth or your truth, and they somehow, this is my blue and that's your blue. No, blue is blue. Like, that's, it's what I believe is the truth, and I'm not, I don't waver. I don't say things that I've been forced to say, or that it's good for business, or it's, quite honestly, if something's really bad for business, I'm just not going to talk about it. Like, and by the way, there's some truth for you. You're like, he says anything. No, there's been things I've held off on. I'm thinking of one right now in my head that I was like, I should probably do a video on that. And then I started thinking about the repercussions. I'm like, oh, that's not going to be good. That is not going to be good. And I wavered enough to where, like, by the time I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do the video. It was so late now that it was like, it's not relevant anymore. I'm like, I'm just not going to. It's not going to cover it. And so it didn't hurt anything by not, but it was just kind of that one of those things, like, it did kind of make me kind of go, I don't know. I don't know if I should touch that. And by the way, part of that, it's not just because it's bad for business, but it was because I wasn't 100. I knew the people involved, and I wasn't 100% on, like, the opinion I had. I didn't know if it was 100% true or not. And so to use my voice to go out and then say what I was going to say, which was my opinion, could have harmed them. Not harmed them, like physically harmed them, but could have harmed them as far as, like, people's idea of them, or, like, their job, or their, whatever. And I'm like, I need to be 100%, before I'm going to just go out and, say what I was going to say, which is what I was really thinking. Okay. So anyway, Katie Johnson stepped down, and this is really interesting because, again, who knows if she stepped down or not? My guess would be probably not. But there's a lot of places this goes, Let's just go to the place for a second. Let's just say she stepped down. You say, why would she step down? Because, it's a tough job to have right now. That's not exactly looked at as a successful thing right now, the NAR legal team. So you say, why would she step down? Well, there's probably pressure. Probably everywhere you go, the members hate you, and they're like, you didn't protect us. You didn't, And so that just becomes a not fun job. it's like being Kevin Sears right now, the NAR president. It's like everywhere you go, you're a good dude, and yet there's half the people there being like, you are terrible. Like they have no idea like what role he had, what role he didn't. It's just you're in that role, so that's what it is. But now let's go to the other side. Let's say she didn't step down. Let's say she was fired. Well, we know that Nakia Wright, the permanent CEO of NAR now, she was named the permanent CEO 1 month ago. So we'd have to look at why was she fired. If NAR truly had no choice in these settlements, like it's like either settle or you're going to, go bankrupt, well, then that's not a reason to fire her. So you go to a couple different places, right? You say, is it budgetary? They've committed $418 million over the next 4 years. Chances are in January, your membership's going to drop. Where's the money coming from? Do you try to make the money up with things like this? Like that's not even a blip on the radar when you talk about a salary, so who knows? Is this the beginning of that? Are there other people who have been let go that just didn't make the headlines? It didn't make my videos. It wasn't as big of a deal. Are they cutting staff? That wouldn't surprise me. Is this Nakia Wright saying, I'm going to put my handprints on this. I'm going to make moves. I'm going to make changes now that I'm permanent CEO. I don't know. I'm just being very honest with all of you. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. But something's going on. The head of the legal team doesn't just step down out of nowhere. So I think more of that will come out as we go along. But you guys should at least be aware of it, that it happened. It's a big deal. But that's part of why you guys listen to me. There's a lot of things you should be aware of. RE Colorado, this is interesting actually, because I got a little insight on this now. So RE Colorado, which is the 16th largest MLS in the country, was just sold to a private entity. And this is a big deal because, and then there was another one, by the way. I ran a what's it called? A video on, what was the name of that? I'm going to see if it's on here. The name of the other MLS that did that, that went private, which of course I can't find it right now. But there was another MLS that went private, meaning that you didn't have to be an NAR member to be a part of the MLS. And this is so convoluted right now. It's so complicated. Like a lot of people don't realize that in order to join your local MLS in most places, you have to be a part of the local, state, and national membership. NAR and all the local, state, all of those things. And a lot of agents are upset about this because they're like, what the heck? Like I need the MLS to do my job. Why do I have to be a part of these other organizations? I don't want to be a part of them. And there are places right now that have they've began antitrust suits, and I think they're going to win because I think it's true. But there's a bigger issue here. So first off, RE Colorado, the 16th largest MLS in the country, sold to a private entity, which was crazy because it's always owned by NAR. It's tied in with these other groups and whatever. And now that means that this private entity can do whatever the heck they want, and they don't have the interest of whatever NAR and other are, and that becomes, for the people, with NAR, in other words, problematic because they want to be able to control these things. They sold, and a lot of people were going crazy, and they're like, how is this happening, whatever. And then I'm not going to out this person publicly, but let's see if I have it here, got a message from, chairman of the board for RE Colorado, who was pivotal in this sale. And she just let me know, like, hey, thank you for your video. And she said, more than anything, thank you for just speaking facts and not being emotional. So I put out a video, and I always try to come from the place of facts. And she's like, we appreciate you for that. Like, we're over here listening to you, whatever. Thank you for only speaking the facts. We took a lot of heat from a very small amount of subscribers, but it's the, it's the silent, or it's the loud minority, And, she just basically said there's so much more to this, and, we appreciate you putting out facts and whatever, but it was the right move for our users. And she went through all these other things. And then I got another message from someone. And it's so interesting because the big thing that's happening behind the scenes right now that is not yet being talked about is the fact that these not-for-profit boards and associations own their for-profit MLSs, and they're acting like they're different entities. This is actually a big deal. So they're hiding it. And they're saying, hey, we're not for profit. We're not for profit. And then they own this for-profit tech company, MLS. And they're not even trying to hide it. Like the same staff that works the board is working the MLS. Like if you go look it up, it's the same. And it's happening all over the country. And there's a big move right now behind the scenes where like a lot of these people who are on the boards and on the whatever are going, this isn't right. We need to sell, just like RE Colorado did. We need to sell off the MLS to someone else because these suits and everything, these antitrust, they're going to win. Like we're pulling the wool over people's eyes, telling them we're nonprofit when we own entities that our own staff works dually with that are for profit, which means you're not nonprofit. And that's a big thing right now. It's happening. Like I got people reaching out to me, sending me private messages, and I'm not going to out them. I'm not going to whatever, but they're talking about how they're in these meetings right now, and it's like shouting matches, and it's like people are torn right now on what to do, and we should sell off the MLS. Well, why would we do that? And why would and there's it's a thing, okay? And so RE Colorado doing that kind of gave an okay to other places to say, well, maybe we need to be doing that. Maybe we need to be. And this is the next thing you're going to start to see, guys, is you're going to start to see a lot of MLSs sold off. Because if they don't, they're going to be in trouble. Like they're going to get hit with these antitrust suits. And I want to be clear because I feel like I have to say this every time I talk about this stuff. I am pro the industry. I'm pro NAR. I just think that we need to get our stuff together. And I think there's been way too much behind the scenes here where like we've gotten away with a lot of things as far as, and while I don't agree with the lawsuits and all that stuff, it did shine a light on the idea that like we need to be doing things right. We need to give people choice. You know, I'm always for giving people choice. I want people to choose to be a part of their local organizations. I want people to choose to be a part of their national NAR. But I want them to be able to choose. That's the difference. When those of you that write me messages and tell me how anti these organizations, how anti the industry, anti-NAR, you're not listening, okay? I want a strong industry. I want a strong membership, which means they chose to be there. You know, when you looked at, you know, in the old days, you would have armies that would fight each other, where you'd have a smaller army who chose to be there, and you'd have a much larger army, but they were slaves. Do you know who won almost every single time? The smaller army. Because once the slaves realized, wait a second, if you win, we're free, you know? Like, they're like, come on, they're over here. The leader's over there. Like, let's go, you know? And it's a weird example, but it's the same mentality. Like, I want people to choose to be there because we're stronger. Even in smaller numbers, you're stronger when people choose to be there. Hey everyone, I want to take a moment and talk to you about a really cool company called Privy. You know, if you were listening to this episode or even moving forward here, you're going to notice that I'm going to talk a lot about investors and how I think this is a huge part of the market that if you're growing a real estate business, we're not paying enough attention to. You know, I'm a big believer here that sometimes to grow your business, you don't just have to pick up a piece of the pie that's already there. Sometimes you have to go to a completely different pie. And it's so interesting because when you look at it, you look at all the data and you see that, you know, 26, 27%, almost 30% of all residential transactions in the last 12 months were investors, right? They were investors. And when I was an agent, like a ton of the business that I did were investors. And so a lot of you hear that and you're like, oh, it's institutional investors. Do you know institutional investors only make up about less than 3% of the overall market? And that's actually going down for the first time in years, which means that we have this huge number of people who are buying and selling properties all of the time, right under our nose, thousands of transactions. They're going to happen regardless. The only question is, are they happening with you? And that's the key thing that I want you to understand. And so when you look at Privy and what they do, they make you the go-to person to work with when it comes to finding investments, when it comes to finding out what a good deal is, when it comes to finding out what the right neighborhoods are, what the wrong neighborhoods are, what previous people had did, all at the touch of a button, right? And so all of a sudden, it's funny, I look at their stuff and I'm like, you know, I worked with all these investors when I was selling real estate, and I'm like, how did I do this without this kind of a tool? And you don't have to do that. Now these kinds of tools are there. And so you're going to hear me in the future talking a lot about working with investors and what that looks like. And like I've said over and over again, it is my job to not only tell you what the problems are and what the solutions are, but ultimately to give you the tools that you need so that you can be the go-to source for something like that. And man, are these people worth a lot of money to you. So do yourself a favor, guys. Go to privy.pro. That's privy.pro. Amazing tool. You can ask us questions. There's more things even coming down the road with them that are just going to blow you away. But this is a tool you need in your business, especially for what it costs. It's not a cost, though. It's an investment, but it's well worth it. Let's start getting those investors. And so this is something, if you're listening to this and you're part of your local group, like, you need to be thinking like this. You need to be like, really looking at, like, how are you guys doing it locally? And is that okay? Will that hold up under an antitrust lawsuit? Are you really connected, but you're saying you're not connected? Do you have the same staff working both on a nonprofit and a profit? That's something that we need to clean up. We need to clean up our house, so to say, okay? I'll have more about that in the future, by the way. We might even have somebody on who wants to talk about it. But we need to be looking at this stuff, okay? Like, RE Colorado selling to a private firm is just the beginning, okay? It's not the end, okay? And I don't think that's not the worst thing in the world, okay? It's so funny. We talk about, like I said, like, not being owned, not being, just saying what you want to say and whatever. And I'm getting to the point where, like, literally, like, guys, I still try to answer a lot of messages and everything. I get why people don't at a certain point. Because just some of the messages are just dumb. Like, dumb. I put out a video the other day, right? And I put out a video about to help people. And it was I try to mix it up, guys. Not just real estate stuff, but I put out a financial video, okay? And I talked about the mentality of, poor people versus rich people. Because there is a mentality that's different, guys. Everybody thinks that it's just like, they just have more or they don't have more. No, your mentality doesn't matter. What you do with that money matters, right? I said a couple years ago at the Advance, I said, if you were born poor, not your fault. If your kids were born poor, your fault. And people were like, what the crap? And they get all offended. And it's like, well, okay, where am I wrong? That doesn't mean you're a bad person. That means wake up and let's change this, okay? And a lot of poverty does come from how we think, how we view money. And for a lot of you, it's not your fault, because it wasn't something we were talked about, that was talked about when you're kids. We're not taught about money. One of the courses in Jared James Academy is about finances, because we need to understand money. And I made this statement on this video I made, and I said, look, poor people look at money and they view money as a way to pay bills. That's just the truth. They look at money as a way, even next level poor people, it's like, how do I maintain or build credit? Which is credit's just another way to buy more stuff, and it's just like, and that's why people are broke at every level, right? And because they're always just looking at, how can I afford to do this? How can I buy this? How can I, and that's why they're broke at 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000. It doesn't change, because it has more to do with what they're spending than what it is that they're making. And I said, rich people don't look at money like that. Rich people look at money as a way to make more money. Rich people get money and go, how do you make babies? How do we breed you? Like, how does money work for me, right? And I get these messages from people and they're so offended. It's like just the fact you said poor, It's like when people, I always joke around with my friends and I'm like, there's two things people whisper. They whisper cancer and race, So like if they're there and they're like, well, my friend, she got cancer. They whisper it. Or if they're talking about like their friend, they're like, my black friend. And I'm like, cancer and race. That's what people whisper, which is just so telling. It's so weird. It's so, whatever. And so I get these messages and it's like, you say poor and now they're triggered. And it's like, first off, understand the point of the video. I said, I don't want you to be poor anymore. I don't want you to think, I'm trying to get you to understand that we need to change the way we think about money. And they're like, how dare you? Poor people are there. And they just go into this whole, whatever, and da-da-da-da-da. You'll never understand. Da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, okay, yeah. Two things. Number one, I grew up on food stamps and, from jumping from trailer to trailer and state to state and, give me a freaking break. I don't know what poor. Guys, I didn't play. I wasn't going to. And I was like a star soccer player. I wasn't playing my freshman year because we didn't have the $80 for the warm-up. Okay? The coach literally came to my house and said, "Why the hell are you not playing?" And then this is before NIL days or anything, and I don't think he's supposed to do this, but he paid for my warm-up. And I think you're not supposed to do that. No one will ever look up who that is or whatever. But, like, give me a friggin' break. Like, I get it, okay? And that's why I do you no good by not talking about these things. So I know what it's like to be poor, which means I also know what it's like to think like a poor person. Like, I know what the mentality is of so many of those people that I grew up with. It is, they try to make money to buy the next pair of shoes. Try to make money to buy the next. That's a poor mentality. I didn't create it. It's just the reality. Don't get mad at me. It doesn't mean you can't find someone who's poor who doesn't think like that. That doesn't disprove the theory, okay? And it doesn't mean I want people to be. I'm trying to get you to recognize that, like, if your only thing is to, figure out how to pay bills, you're never going to get ahead. Like, that's it. And so it's just been funny to watch people get so. That's why I said, like, it's like you almost don't even want to go into, like, the DMs or whatever. You're just like, oh my, it's just exhausting. It's just like, good Lord, did you hear anything that I said? Did you, and then when they argue with you, you're like, yeah, that's why you're still poor, because that offends you and you never, like, so instead of learning, you just, everything's a trigger. Everything's a, and that's not the intention, guys. Like, I'm here to help, I've been poor and I've been not poor. And I have come from the mountain to tell you, one is better than the other. They just tell you right now, one is better than the other. People always say, "Oh, money doesn't make you happy." Well, neither does being broke. Like that's being broke never helped anybody. Being broke leaves you in a place where you can't help other people. Being broke leaves you in a place where you're always stressed and always anxious and always nervous and always, my God, like it sucks. It sucks, And so this person I was talking to that actually got me to make that video when I told them their mentality, like, that's where that video came from, by the way, is that I was talking to a friend who's not doing well. And it was somebody I can be very honest with. And I didn't say you, I just said, let me tell you the difference between how people think, But it came from a place of, like, wanting to help and wanting to, pull them out of that place, where everything is about just trying to get by, trying to, there's so much more than that, And then I said to this person, because he said to me, he goes, well, I don't have a great ability to make a ton of extra income right now. Okay, so let's get into this, because then I got people who are commenting and, oh, that's such short-sighted, and I'm like, yeah, 90 seconds, relax. And there's some reality in that. Obviously there's tough stuff. You can get a second job. You can make something aside. You can sell stuff online. You can, it's true. He's like, I don't have your followers. I don't have your, there's always an excuse. Always. I didn't at one time either, but regardless, let's get very practical. I said, you're right. Yeah. Maybe it's not that you can't just, is that a job with a salary? He's like, I can't just, can I get 20 grand more? Like, yeah, good luck with that. Your boss is going to say you can find another job. So I said, yeah, there's things that are controllable and there's things that are not controllable. You are correct right now that in the short term, most likely, yeah, you could get a second job. There's arguments to be made, but let's just take it at its face value. You don't have a whole lot of control of any major increase in your income. So let's stop looking at the ceiling and let's look at the floor. Like, what about expenses? And I literally said to him, like, we seem to eat out a lot. Like, you seem to, you got Starbucks in your hand all the time. Like, you got this sucker in your hand all the time. And I started going down the line, your wife's doing CrossFit at $200 a month. But we go down the line. And, what you find is that while income is not always the complete controllable, expenses many times are. I don't think we look at those enough. We have taught ourselves, we have started to believe, just this world we live in, that certain things are a right instead of a privilege. Like, I heard a comment the other day and someone said, healthcare is a right. And I'm like, I get the sentiment of that. Like, we want it to be, but at its core, that's not true. Like, you're not born with it. We try to provide it, but it's a privilege. Like, it's not a right. We want it to be as a member of a certain country, but, like, again, just go back to the core of, like, it's not. You're not born with that. Like, that's not how that works, right? And I think a lot of people have gotten to that point of, like, where they are so entitled that we just think that everything is a right now. And so we started going down his expenses. And he's like, well, I can't go without that. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? You can't go without that. Well, I work hard. I do. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? You're broke. Like, like that doesn't matter. Like like if you're serious about getting rid of that anxiety, getting rid of whatever, we need to start to cut some stuff. And I'm not saying it's not going to hurt because you've gotten used to it and you think it's a right. Okay? If it was a right, you wouldn't have to pay for it, first off. You're paying for it, so it's a privilege. You're choosing to have that, okay? And I'm not saying that it's not going to hurt and it's not going to be difficult, but you know what hurts even more is being broke and being in debt. So we got to make a choice here, So we just started going down the expenses, and we literally came up with like $2,500 a month. That was just not necessary. And I'm like, so what would you do with an extra $2,500 a month? And he's like, oh my God, it'd be like life-changing. I'm like, well, it's sitting right in front of you. How much is that worth it to you? I want you to feel the emotion of how good that would feel to have an extra $2,500 a month. And then I want you to feel the pain of getting rid of those things. And you need to decide on the teeter-totter which one is greater. Which one do you want more? That's it. And he's like, I never really thought of it like that. I said, well, good night, everybody. That's what I'm here for. That's, now we need to think about it. Now you need to, because that feeling is available to you right now. All you gotta do is cut that stuff. That's it. Like you're good to go, And he's like, wow. He's like, I think my wife and I need to have a convo. I said, you need to do more than have a convo, because she's going to fight for it just like you did. And that's not helpful. You have the ability to do this. Now, what if you took, I don't know, $500 of those dollars every month and you guys used it to whatever, do stuff with the family, do date nights, whatever. But then you took $2,000 a month and you just put it aside. That's a lot of freaking money, He's like, yeah, that'd be pretty crazy. End of the year, we'd almost $25,000. I'm like, yeah, think about that. Or you can live your life the way you are now, experience none of it, and just be stressed. Because that's what you are right now, And he's like, again, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, yeah, I know, And so, but that only came from, when I get those DMs from people, like, guys, I have felt struggle. Like, I know what it's like to, have kids' birthday parties and, you're pulling money out of their jar to pay for the pizza at the party. Like, I've lived those days. It friggin' sucks, And not just trying to think about how are you going to pay it back, but how is there any way they won't know that it's gone? I'm not pulling this because I'll have it in a week, I'm pulling it because I don't have it, And that is, I get it. I 100% get it, but it's got to start somewhere. Positions of strength start somewhere, and they don't happen because you want them to happen. They happen because of something very tangible that you do. And that's an important point for people to understand, So I would just say to all of you that, you don't follow me, you don't, because you're looking, to me to give you sugar, whatever. Like, I might say some stuff you don't like, and that doesn't mean you turn away and say, I don't trust anything else he says. But, like, if your default mode, just knowing who I am and knowing, like, the place I come from and the purity I come from and, like, intelligence and everything else, if your default is before you get offended to go, is there something in that I haven't considered? You'd probably do yourself a lot of good. Because I don't say anything out of just pure, like, believe me, guys, I've thought things through. And I'm willing to tell you when I'm wrong, too. Like, it happens, But it also doesn't come from a place of just no intelligence. Like, I know I got a good grasp on a lot of things. Like, I see a lot of things. I read a lot of things. I've been through a lot of things. Like, if our default mode was to be what can I learn rather than I feel triggered, if you've come to a place in your life whenever you feel uncomfortable that's supposed to trigger you to be upset, you're not going to learn a whole lot in this life. Being uncomfortable doesn't mean you're triggered. Being uncomfortable doesn't mean that now it's because the thing that was said was wrong. Being uncomfortable, if you change the meaning, might be a new learning, the potential for a new learning, a learning opportunity. And if you look at it that way, you're going to do a lot better. Do a lot better in business, a lot better in life, a lot better in, I'm even listening to, I'm listening to the VP candidates last night. And as I'm listening to the VP candidates, I just have this thought, and I'm like, there are so many people right now in this country, the high majority, who cannot listen to this with an open mind, who literally cannot listen to these two people, listen to anything from quote unquote the other side, and actually hear some truth or learn something or adjust what they're thinking. They just hear it and they're like, now get on him. Did you win? That's a terrible. You're an idiot. Oh, that's a, whatever. And it's just this whatever. I'm literally, you're talking to a guy who, like, when I'm listening to them, look, I've got a certain person I may like the way that what they stand for more than the other, but literally when I'm listening, I'm just like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I never looked at it from that perspective. Like, that actually makes sense. Huh, okay, never took it from that perspective. Okay. Like, those are people you can learn from because, like, they're willing to learn themselves, They're open to the idea that maybe they don't have the ultimate truth on everything. Like, when you actually think about it, how many things have you looked back years later and been like, yeah, I was a dummy. That doesn't make sense. Or, whatever. Like, popular opinion doesn't have to be your opinion. Like, use your freaking head, Hey guys, I want to talk to you about an amazing real estate tool right now called Mosaik. If you want to take your people off of the portals where they're all hanging out and whatever and into your ecosystem, this is the tool that does that. This is a beginning to end, not a CR, it's not another CRM, it doesn't replace that, but it's a beginning to end system that really looks at the lifetime value of your client and looks at every part of that process and takes care of all of it in a way that's completely transparent. So yes, they've got search, they've got transaction coordination, they've got, even for us when we do things like we teach our students the Core 100, they've got the ability to put those people in there, track what's happening, do all of that in an amazing way. But probably the thing that I love about this more than anything is the transparency. In an industry that keeps talking about transparency, and usually when you hear something over and over again, it means that it's not being done at all. This is actually a transparent tool. This is the first tool that I've seen that actually brings the consumer into the transaction. And I think that is the next level of where we are going within this industry. You hear from so many buyers and sellers that, oh, my agent didn't do anything, or I feel like they're not, and there's not this communication going on. This is the first tool I've seen, almost like the early days of .loop where you had that collaboration, but it was just for the document and the signature. They can do that with the transaction now, not only with the clients, but with the vendors, whoever it is, in an amazing way where they can see every step of what's going on. You can write notes to them back and forth. They can see every part of the paperwork and everything and the way that you decide to show it. It's really the next level of what we need to be doing from a consumer experience perspective so they know what's happening, and more importantly, we drive that lifetime value back to you. So if you haven't yet, guys, this is a tool you're going to hear over and over again. You're going to hear me talk about it because I really think it's my role to not just define what the problems or solutions are, but provide the tools that will actually get you there. And while so many tools right now are just check the box and just say you have them, this is one yourself, your team, your brokerage. If you're not on it yet, you need to be. This is not the last you're going to hear about this. They're going to grow astronomically, and this is something you need to get on board with if you're going to operate. If you're going to be one of those people that really overcomes and is that top producer in your area, you've got to have the right tools in place, and Mosaik is one of those right now. So do yourself a favor. Go check out mosaik.io, mosaik.io. Again, mosaik.io. You won't regret it, guys. Send us questions if you do, but this is one of those ones that you're going to look back on and remember, amazing tool. And so when you come from that perspective, when you listen to someone like me or you listen to others or whatever, I just think that we'll be in such a better place. Last but not least, usually I like to talk about something personal on here. I had the freaking time of my life last night. So my son's soccer team just moved up to number 9 in the country. Which is wild because we're not in a hot weather state. We're like, they play all year. It's all like California and this and Florida and whatever. They just moved up to number 9 in the state. And they had senior night last night. And I told them all day, I'm like, you better go ball out tonight. You get 1 senior night unless you flunk. And then you get 2 senior nights. No, I said, you get 1 senior night. You better go ball out, kid. And he's like, I got it. And he had a hat trick in 12 minutes, which in soccer is not easy. Like, that's not easy. Hat trick in 12 minutes, and then they took him out, and because we were now blowing this team out, and it was my alma mater for high school, by the way. And I've never rooted harder against myself. And then they put in the younger kids and did whatever, and I'm like, they're really on senior night not going to play the seniors again? And they sat them the whole rest of the first, and they started the second half with the other team, and I'm like, they're not going to play them. And then 15 minutes ago, they put them back in. 30 seconds in, header, 4th goal, and I'm like, let's go. So last night was amazing. He had 4 goals, a couple of assists. and this team is just fun to watch. Like for anybody who knows me, like I enjoy watching them more than I enjoyed playing. I'm trying to think if that's a true statement. I think it is. I just love it. I love it. I just hope they don't get too full of themselves, because how cool would it be to end your senior year with a state title? And then when they introduced them as the best senior class this school has ever seen. And I'm thinking, can you let them do something first? You know what I mean? They could go blow it and lose in the first round, you know? I say this to them all the time. You're 17-year-old kids. When you get that, you're seeing national rankings and stuff. If you think that they're not full of themselves right now, they keep telling me, no, Mr. James, we're good. I'm like, yeah, sure you are. Mm-hmm. All you do is run into one really good team in the States that you're not used to playing another really good team, and they smack you in the face, get lucky a little bit, and now you're down, you know? But man, they're fun to watch. Like they got a lot of talent on that team, and it's fun to watch. And last night was super cool. He's got his face there. I'm gonna put up a post maybe later today or something. But just super cool. All the years you've gone to soccer, you've gone to whatever, and now to like watch them, and like they're top 10 in the nation, which is crazy. And then he goes out and balls out like that, you know. And for any of you listening, like this was my son who was at the advance with me, who came up on stage with me and makes the 200 to 300 calls. He's going to be on the podcast, by the way. He keeps going, when are we doing a podcast, Dad? Maybe we'll talk about that game. But sure. This is the son, the older one that a lot of you met at the advance and whatever, and has done the internship in real estate and 200 to 300 calls a day and whatever. He went out and just balled out, 4 goals on senior night in about 20 minutes, because they didn't, it's 40-minute halves, but I think they played about 20 minutes. Yeah. Like they did not, they pulled them out. Like they pulled the senior starters out, and man, is it fun to watch. It's, when you listen to someone like me, and, I work a lot, I travel a lot, and I'm getting ready now to even go to another trip and whatever. I said at the advance, and I so meant it, I said, like, for what? Like, what do you work so hard for? Like, what are you doing? And yeah, man, I love my guys' trips. I love my trips with Linda. I love whatever. But man, I love the flexibility to kind of work around and, go to those games. And it's just been so cool. So yeah, senior night, so cool. A memory we always remember. I don't know if that's the right word. Yeah. Top 10 in the country. Hopefully they keep moving up. To end senior year undefeated, go through states, would be just such a cool thing. Such a nice finale to, our whole life, going to soccer games and going to whatever. People are like, well, is he going to play in college? I don't know. Like he's iffy on college. He knows he doesn't need college for, what he wants to do. If he goes, it would be strictly for the social, hanging with friends, doing whatever. And he's kind of said to me, he goes, I don't know if I want to play in college. Like if you play in college, especially at a high level, like it's a job, yeah. And he's like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like if I go, it's because I want to enjoy myself, not, they call it student athlete. It's really athlete student. I don't, so this is probably going to be the end of the road. Senior night, I wasn't very emotional. It was very easy. The last time he walks off the field, whether that's losing in states or whether that's winning a state title, I am probably going to be a freaking mess. Because you just think about all of the time and everything. It's like you're entering a new season, which is awesome, of life, but that one I'll probably be a mess. And probably only because he'll be a mess. Oh, yeah. He'll be coming over, and that's going to get me. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was really cool. Was psyched to do that. Anything we touched some stuff on the industry here. We'll have some other stuff coming out. I'm about to hit the road, big time. Yeah. I've got a lot of cities I'm heading to. I think I'm not gonna read them all off, but I got a lot of cities I'm heading to, and gonna see a lot of you in person. So that'll be fun. But those are the things going on. Anything we missed?
Not that I know.
Got our first call with Jared James Academy.
Oh yeah, that's coming up on the Monday.
If they go to jaredjamestoday.com/advance. No. Academy Advance. Yeah. jaredjamestoday.com/Academy Advance. You can still get that deal.
How long is that deal up for?
It was supposed to already be done. I just thought of it now. So I'm like, go for it. Whatever. But we're going to start doing we're doing 10 different calls on live with me, where we go over those 10 things I said I would be doing to dominate in your market, and we're going to break them up with other calls too. It's not just going to be 10 straight of those. So like, for example, October 21st, I'm going to go live with John Mangus, and we're going to go into how their brokerage is actually leveraging the new rules. They're not doing broker to broker, but how they're making almost 18% more as a result. And we're going to do the boring crap. We're going to talk about, how does the contract change? What do they put in there? What are they asking for as far as the percentage? And what are the objections they're getting? We're just going to get very tangible with the boring stuff. And so it'll be that and other stuff we'll be covering. So anybody who's not in Jared James Academy, get on that. You're going to love that. It's going to be a good thing for you. But I think that's it. Do we have anything else to... I'll see you guys on the road. I think we're good, right?
I think so.
All right, guys. So as always, make sure you're connected. Connectwithjared.com. I'll be posting stuff from the road and otherwise. And love you guys. We'll see you next episode.
See ya.